This is our talk on system hardening. But first, a little background about us. Who are we? My name is Mazza. I have been an independent security researcher for about 10 years. Interesting story, I kind of got into this playing video games. I started reverse engineering the PlayStation 2 console and building my own tools to decompile the system and to make my own modifications. And from there, it kind of led to how do you do this on a bigger scale? How do you do this with other machines? Since then, I've been working at various firms doing vulnerability research and development. And now I'm working at Seguru as a system and network engineer with Sean.
My name's Sean Arries. I'm old. I've been doing this for about 24 years now. I started with computers in 1994. BBSs, the internet, they didn't even exist back then. I got into hacking because I really liked playing video games a lot when I was a kid, and every time I would get in trouble at school, my dad would lock the computer so that I couldn't play my video games anymore. So I had to hack past his passwords and get access to the computer so I could play when he wasn't gone. So it came out of a necessity of reverse engineering BIOSes and how do I clear passwords and how do I get access so I could play my video game, because that was really the drive. So that was literally my first intro into hacking. Back then, hacking and security research, we didn't even call it any of that. It was just, that was what I was into. There was no such thing as penetration testers. There was no such thing as a security field. If you did anything bad with computers, you were a bad person and you should be put in jail. That was really the way the mentality was back in the early 90s and late 90s. It changed a lot around 2004. Basically in 2004 was when I was able to stop calling myself a systems administrator or a systems engineer or a network engineer, and I started to call myself a penetration tester. I took on penetration testing jobs in around 2005, and I've been doing that kind of work ever since then. Which penetration testing, if you don't know what that means I'm a professional hacker. Companies hire me to hack into their company, show them where their vulnerabilities are at, and I tell them. So that's my job. I get to play bad guy all day, every day. It's kind of fun. So I did that for about 10 years, and then now lately, I got tired of making other companies millions and millions and millions of dollars, so we decided, me and my buddies that have been doing this for a long time, to start our own company and create a device that we could sell to consumers to help them with their security and protect their computers based on the knowledge that we've learned over our careers. So that's basically what Seguru is. And we ended up here in Tallinn and in Estonia because you guys got some great software developers over here and some great talent coming out of here, so that's why we're here. So what we're going to talk about here in system hardening is basically an in-depth network analysis, or this is what Seguru is, I'm sorry. So Seguru, what our company and our product is and what we're here doing, is basically an in-depth network analysis tool. It's IDS, IPS on crack, right? It's really integrated with some artificial intelligence and behavioral profiling that we're building. Basically for mobile devices. So right now, if you think about an iPhone or an Android phone, what is the security product that you install on that phone to protect that phone and the data that's on that phone? There's no answer for that. What's the product? What do you install on your phone to know what's happening on your phone? On your PC, you install antivirus, you install HID systems, you install a lot of different things on a desktop, but what do you install on your mobile device? There's nothing. So basically what Seguru is we're trying to solve that question. So it'll be an app that you download and install on your phone. When you install this app on your phone, what it allows us to do is basically play Big Brother with your phone. We see everything that's going in and out of your phone. We're able to use our artificial intelligence and our IDS and IPS engines to analyze that traffic, detect bad threats and bad things that are happening on your phone, and send you push notifications to your phone that, hey, this app over here is doing something it shouldn't be doing. This app is accessing stuff it shouldn't be accessing. And that's basically what we're here in Tallinn building. We hope to be launching this publicly in the iPhone store, or the Apple store and the Android store right around September 1st. So that's that.
Big Brother, not in the sense that we can see all of your data, because most applications have some sort of transport layer security. But within that encrypted data, you can spot certain patterns. You can get an idea of how the device is behaving, because Seguro tries to tackle the problem, well, if you can't secure your device, what if you can make your device as secure as it can be while it connects to the internet? What if you can monitor the sort of possible malicious traffic or egress filtering while the device is communicating, and make educated guesses as to the security of your system? So, an overview of system hardening. What is it? System hardening is basically making sure your devices are secure. Making sure that the laptop that you use is secure, making sure that the server that you're connecting to is also secure. From who? From malicious hackers, from the nation state, Big Brother, from competitors of a different company.
From Shodan.
From Shodan, from people using Shodan, spying on you in your house while they're in a classroom in Estonia. So system hardening is giving the users that use this system a sense of security. And it gives them something that they can trust in. Trust that they can confide their information that is personal, that has meaning to that system and through that network. Why does it matter on a personal level? It matters because you can gain a lot of information by just your Google searches. Companies exist that do data mining, build big psychological profiles that do behavioral analysis, and that can basically estimate the propensity of what you are going to do given a certain situation, or what you want to buy given a certain set of interests that you have. In a here you go.
For example, like Facebook right now. Facebook polls your microphone every 8 seconds right now for 3 seconds, takes a sample of whatever audio is happening in the room around you. This is happening right now. It's uploaded to Facebook servers. It goes through an artificial intelligence engine that breaks down what was said and what keywords were in that conversation. And then if you were to open up your phone and scroll your Facebook news stream, you would see, say you were talking about, hey, I need a new iPad. The very first advertisement you would see as you're scrolling through your news feed would be an iPad. Haven't you ever noticed, like, hey, I was just talking about something and then I looked on my Facebook feed and it just happened to be there? The reason it happened to be there is because your phone is polling what it's saying every time. All the time. You guys give this permission. All the audio in this room is being uploaded to Facebook every 3 seconds. And this is happening globally right now. And the artificial intelligence engines that are analyzing this data are able to determine massive amounts of information. Big data is the next big thing. You know, we can determine everything a person's going to do based on statistical anomalies. Of the larger and larger the data set gets, the more and more people that you have information on, the easier it is to determine what and predict what people are going to do, say, think, buy, interested in, what you want to do on Friday night. They'll know before you even know, because it's just big data. It's statistical at that point. So,
on a business level, protecting IP, protecting against competitors. Some competitors resort to sabotage. They would like to go in and maybe hire a botnet to shut down your system. On a nation level, war, cyber warfare, exploits are basically tools that do what they say. They exploit a vulnerability in a vulnerable system that gain privileged access onto that system. These can be very useful for nations because you can disrupt entire ecosystems. You can disrupt their economy. You can disrupt their day-to-day infrastructure, say for traffic lights, say for an electric grid. And Stuxnet. Has anybody heard of Stuxnet?
Now we know where the nerds are at. There we go.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
Very briefly, Stuxnet was a very smart virus that was created in conjunction with the NSA in the Israeli intelligence sector. And it was targeted to the Iranian nuclear facility. Stuxnet basically did not need to communicate to the internet. It was that smart. It knew what its target was. Stuxnet used an array of zero-day vulnerabilities, which is not known to anybody, except for obviously the creators and maybe somebody else who has kept this secret. But the Stuxnet virus was smart enough to travel through anyone's computer, and they targeted who in particular. They wanted the engineers that were in that nuclear facility. So they planted the virus around them in places that they would go to. And the virus was able to jump from USB drives and then get into the non-internet connected nuclear facility. And once it was in there, it knew what to do. It had shut-off dates to coincide with the US kind of presidential election and the cycle. But what Stuxnet did was it broke down the nuclear reactors. So the nuclear reactors in Iran were breaking down. The Iranian government had no idea what was going on, and they thought it was internal sabotage. So they started firing their own employees, trying to find who is destroying this. So this does happen on a national level, and it's really important to make sure that your systems are secure. So how does one go about hardening their system? Basically through research and development. Vulnerability research and development is basically a bunch of people that sit around and they analyze source code and they make sure that the source code is kind of verified. It does what it's supposed to do, and that's all it does. It doesn't give too much permission or too much access to parts of it where it shouldn't do that. Also, red team and blue team. And this gets into the sort of game that system hardening is. Red team and blue team, we'll talk about it a little more later, but is basically a fight between simulated hackers and system administrators trying to protect their system.
Okay, so you guys met Ralph the last time he was there. Me and Ralph are partners. We've been working together for about like 15 years now. And in the last about 5-6 years of our career, we've been making this transition into Hollywood. Hollywood actually reached out and started looking for some real hackers. It all came, our entrance into Hollywood and how we got working with movies and stuff like that was literally because in 2008, Eminem collaborated with Dr. Dre to do that Recovery album. And about 6 of the songs leaked early on the internet before the album dropped. We were the engineers that caught the case to do the forensics analysis. So we went to Eminem Studios in Detroit, and we're in there, we're analyzing all the sound engineers' computers, and we end up finding out that it was one of the sound engineers that was working with a German wares group, and they'd con the guy in to give him the music, and they were going to pay him some money, and this whole thing that worked out. And so we were able to figure out what happened, and Eminem's manager guy was just so thrilled that we actually figured out what happened and stopped his problem. Of course, those guys got friends. So he's like, hey, I got this friend. He's a director. He's shooting this movie called Twilight right now. And they had a bunch of scenes leak off this movie Twilight. You think you guys can fly up to set in Canada and take care of this stuff? And we were like, yeah, sure, we can do that too. And then fast forward, we've done about 5 movies now. We do a lot of consulting on just trying to make sure that the hacker aspect and the technology aspect that is being presented in these movies and to the community is more realistic and actually accurate, because for so long, IT and movies, watch The Matrix and you'll just be like, ugh,
CIA.
CSI. CSI. Watch CSI Cyber or something like that. It's just such a joke. Enhance. Yeah, right. It's not how it works. So for me, the last big project, I was a technical consultant on this movie, Snowden. I was on set in Germany last year for 3 months with Oliver Stone and Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and sitting in there and doing these scenes and hey, this should look like this, and from a hacker's perspective, this is how this would be, and from government perspective, this is how this would be. And they're literally consulting with real people that actually work in this. And so this clip we're going to play right now from the movie, it has to do with a lot of just understanding data and moving forward with the rest of the talk. So we're going to turn up the volume here because it seems to be a little bit low sometimes. So that is the why of why system hardening is important. Because 3 degrees of separation, 2.5 million people on anybody who knows 40 people. Acquaintances with 40 people. I mean, these systems, if you followed any of the Edward Snowden leaks and the data that was being pumped out about the programs that the NSA was running, it was some powerful, powerful big data stuff. I mean, there's so many papers that aren't even written about what was really possible that the public just doesn't even understand yet because it's really disconcerting. That's the thing. 3 degrees of separation, every single person in this room, you guys are an acquaintance of me. At this point that I've been here, at this point, you guys are now, if anybody was ever investigating me, everybody in this room would be investigated too. They'd be inside of everyone in this room's computer. And that's the way that those kind of programs work. And it's really scary because a lot of people end up in a dragnet that they don't belong there. And that's why system hardening is definitely important moving forward. So, why it matters, right? Big data mining and
Yeah, we kind of went over
most of this. Yeah, company intellectual property, corporate espionage. Corporate espionage is huge right now, especially in. So, if you guys didn't know this, like he mentioned, it is illegal to hack. Well, there's quite a few countries on this planet where it's not illegal to hack. You can just move to this country and you can hack into whatever you want and you can't go to jail for it because they don't have a law in that country for it to be illegal. They would have to work with, the United States government or the European Union would have to work with that country, go there, file charges, try to extradite you. Like, it has happened because we do know of hackers that have literally moved out of a country. There was a Swedish hacker. He was kind of a member of the Pirate Bay, one of the co-founders of it. He got into a lawsuit with the Swedish government because they were like, you owe us $1 million, you're a bad boy, you stole all these movies, blah, blah, blah. He said, I don't like you, Swedish government, got on a plane, flew to Cambodia. Cambodia does not have internet hacking laws. In Cambodia, it is not illegal to hack. There's no internet hacking laws in Cambodia. It took the Swedish government, 5 years? About 5, 4 years?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, around 5, 4 years. So this hacker moved to Cambodia. And now, he doesn't even have to hide where he's hacking from. He's, literally hacking from his apartment in Cambodia, not even hiding his IP address. The Swedish government, haha, you can't get me, you can't get me. That was his ego. It took them 5 years of negotiating with the Cambodian government before the Cambodian government finally gave him up, and he was the first person to be extradited from Cambodia in 45 years. So they did get him. He was just that arrogant, So corporate espionage is a huge thing in America that we're dealing with right now because intellectual property is what makes a company valuable. When you spend hundreds of millions of dollars researching and developing a new technology and then you put that all down into AutoCAD designs. For example, Cartier. I did a forensics investigation on a little-known company called Cartier. And Cartier had spent the last 6 years designing their new watch that was going to cost $40,000 like their watches do. And they spent 6 years developing this watch at a cost of somewhere around, I think it was around $212 million over 6 years. They had invested in building this new watch. And 3 months before the watch was to be released, you could already buy it online, being manufactured in China. And it was being sold for $350. And if you saw the watch for $350, you couldn't tell the difference between that one and the one that cost $40,000. You know why you couldn't? Because just say you hack into Cartier and you steal the AutoCAD design files from the watch, then you happen to live in a country like China who manufactures everything. You just load those AutoCAD designs up and you press go, and the machine just makes it. So Cartier kind of lost out on that one, right? So systems hardening and, after that engagement and we found what happened with that hack, then they hired us to do, help them out and secure up and tighten up. And one of the first things I did against them as an organization, they probably have about 4,000 employees globally. is I did a phishing campaign attack. So I sent everybody in the company an email pretending to be somebody else in the company, and I was trying to see how many people I could get to click on a link. The very first person that I was able to hack was the president of Japan Cartier. Not even like a low-level employee. The first person I hacked into was the president of one of the divisions of the company, which was pretty funny to me. Nation state, protecting a country's infrastructure. That was basically what he was talking about with the Stuxnet stuff. You know, those centrifuges, we were able to disrupt nuclear production. You know, the same thing could happen with, you know, power, water, lights. There's a good movie, Die Hard 4. It's based on a book called Fire Sale, and Fire Sale was written by a hacker called The Mentor, and it basically talks about how to own a continent. Like if I was a hacker and you gave me 20 of my other hacker friends, and then you gave me $20 million, plus you gave me 20 like commando dudes with machine guns and stuff, I could pretty much turn off the east coast of the United States with just that. $20 million, 20 hackers, and 20 guys with guns. That's a team of 60 people able to affect hundreds and hundreds of millions of people. That's pretty big, you know? Like, it's important why this stuff is super scary. So, that's good. There you go.
Here's a little quote. It's a little complex in the context of our talk, but with enough eyes, all bugs are shallow. Linus Torvalds, creator of the Linux kernel. So this is kind of interesting because Linus has always butted heads with the computer security community. But I'll get to that after this slide.
Do we know who Linus is? Yeah, we all know who Linus is. Good.
The current state of kind of security right now is a lot better than what it was. Right now, there's tons of work, there's tons of jobs, job positions that didn't even exist maybe 10 years ago. There's many security firms, antivirus research firms, people that are looking at viruses and malware that is flowing across the wire, that is infecting their clients' computers and creating signatures. And these signatures basically are fingerprints of the virus. And it gets distributed out into all the other various AV products. And those AV products will use those signatures on your computer to help keep you safe. So their research affects kind of the whole global, everyone who uses those products and uses those databases. Modern operating systems have a lot of security. Well, it says some security, but most have a lot of security out of the box. The technology underneath the hood in the kernel does a lot more to make it harder for you to hack into. Just going to throw some terms out, like address space layout randomization, like no data execution, stack cookies, SE Linux, GRSec kernel, SMEP, SMAP. But also, anyone who uses Linux, say if you have Debian, that package manager uses PGP keys. So basically, you have a core group of people at Debian that have a security key that sign that package. And so you know whenever you go to update your system that someone is not in the middle injecting their own infected packages onto your system. And that's great because before that did not exist and it may not have been on transport layer security or anything.
But it's also bad because imagine this, if a hacker were to compromise one of those Debian system administrators, get access to that key, he can now sign his own packages and basically infect the whole entire world. This also happened with SSL certs quite a bit. So hackers knew that they could hack into SSL certificate authority. Once they stole the certificate authority master key, they could basically decrypt any SSL traffic that was signed under that master key. So like imagine you hack into VeriSign, you steal the master CA keys for VeriSign. I can now basically decrypt any SSL traffic from GoDaddy, Google, Facebook, like if you had access to those keys. Now, no normal hackers, meaning non-nation state people, have been caught with that kind of stuff, but it has happened at the nation state level. Think of you're a nation state government and you're attacking another thing, attacking certificate authorities and attacking master keys of Debian providers. Like, it's better security, but it's not perfect security.
Perfect security is a lie.
Exactly.
But HTTPS, that is great because now most of the traffic, 80% of the traffic that goes through internet traffic is now encrypted. Big success. It was not like that 10 years ago. Mostly everything was basically HTTP, plain text. You would see plain text passwords going through the wire. All you have to do is sit somewhere along the nodes of where your packets are being transferred and just passively look at the data. The cons is that there is still poor engineering. And the thing about Shodan is that Shodan allows you to search devices. So whenever you have these sort of smart devices that connect to the internet, the IoT, they have really bad security built in, and most of the manufacturers and the companies don't want to invest as much money or time into making it as secure or keeping it secure. So Shodan kind of enables all of these new cheap devices to be indexed and found, and you can create botnets basically using Shodan and these weak devices.
Right here, and when we talk about the cons, one thing I really like to talk about at this point is understanding what I call the security pyramid. Okay, what the security pyramid is, understand a Fortune 500 company. Say I'm Best Buy, huge giant reseller, and I want to build some new technology. I want to build a robot that like moves my packages around in my store so I don't have to pay employees to do that. So Best Buy will get a team of high-level investors, C-level people that say, hey, this is what we're going to invest in. We're going to develop this technology because it's going to save us a ton of money down the road. So they go, okay, well, how much money is it going to cost us to develop this technology? And then they bring a bunch of nerds into the room, and the nerds go, hey, we think it's going to cost about $20 million to develop this technology. And the C-level people go, okay, $20 million. They get the budget for it. They allocate the $20 million to the team. Now the engineers go to work. Of that $20 million, how much of that $20 million in a percentage form do you think is spent on actually creating the technology, making it work? What the budget was set out to do? Like, we set out to build these robots. How much of that money, of that $20 million, is spent to build those robots and actually get that working? The number is around 82 to 86% of that money is spent solely on making the technology actually work. Once you get past that, about 8 to 9% of the budget is spent on what we call QA. Once we have it working, does it work fast enough? Is it going to be cool enough? Does it actually perform in a usable function to make sure it's okay? So we spend quality assurance. That's what quality assurance is, making sure the product does what it's supposed to do. And about the last 2 or 3% of that budget, if you even get that much, is spent on, is this product actually secure? Can a hacker break into it? Can a hacker tell it to do something it's not supposed to do? So in our world, that's how much they care. 2 to 3% of all IT money is going to be given to us. That's slowly changing. Because 10 years ago, it was about 0.1%. We're at 3 now. We hope to be around 10 within the next 5 years, Because again, security is a cost. It generates no profit for a business. You guys have to remember this. If you want to get into the security world and you want to be a hacker, you want to be a security engineer, you cost companies money and you bring no value. Remember that. You don't make that company any money. All you do is save them money in case there's an incident. You save them from public humiliation. You save them from disgrace. That's what your job is, and that's how you sell yourself to them. Because once they've had enough of those incidents where they're embarrassed, or their product is, shamed in the public eye, then they start to bring on, now we need to spend money to bring security people so that doesn't happen to us anymore. But then you're going to always be fighting with the business groups for money. And we're always the smallest on the totem pole. Everybody wants to spend money where you're going to make money. And we don't make money. We just save things. So that's the security pyramid, and understanding the architecture of how businesses view us and what we do within the product design and scope of, putting together products.
So, that's that.
The history. Okay, the little quote from Linus. It's funny because Linus did not like security researchers. Linus focused mainly on how do we make the Linux kernel just work. And security researchers at this time, people who just thought it was interesting, how do I break into XY box? How do I make it do what it's not supposed to do? Make it do what I want it to do? They would go to the mailing lists, the BBSs, and be like, hey, Linus, there is this bug here that I can use to control your system remotely from my home. And I don't even need credentials. And they would pose the comment to him in kind of an urgent sense, like this needs priority, because quite frankly, it does need priority. However, Linus always thought that, he used a quote that security researchers are kind of like masturbating monkeys, and all they really care about is their own work and shit posting, basically, about Linux. So he wrote them off for such a long time. Researchers at this time were also threatened for their findings. So if you found a vulnerability in a certain product of a company, that company would come at you and try to hold a lawsuit against you for hacking into their product, or at least having the knowledge to hack into their product. You don't even have to do it. The fact that you looked at their product and that you found a way that you could manipulate it that posed some sort of existential threat to the corporation or existential threat to this organization, they were not happy with it and they wanted to pursue you. So a lot of what independent researchers at this time were doing, like, helped shape the playing field. And this all happened in IRC channels, if anyone knows what IRC is, mailing lists, forums, and very famously, zines. Zines were basically collections of like hacker groups and different handles. Zines like FRAC, the FRAC High Council is what they called themselves. They were very, very smart people who would look at all sorts of tech and then post it out, kind of like a quarterly, like scientific research journal, but humorous and funny and witty. So all of this like kind of happened here. Devices then, they had no protections. There was no ASLR, depth, GRSect, no SE Linux. If you had an exploit for a vulnerability on one computer, there's a really good chance that you could point it to any other computer and it would work. The default passwords were prolific. This is where things like Shodan would come in and you would basically find any sort of device and you would just be able to pop right in admin Cisco, admin password, default password, etc. Password policies were also terrible. And all of these no protections just meant it was easier to hack. So one thing that some security companies tried to do is implement security through obscurity. Basically, if I make it really hard for you to look and see what the source code is, then hopefully that deters you from actually trying to look and see what the source code is. And this methodology, like this idea, is complete and utter garbage because as hackers like the challenge. They're like, oh, really? You don't think that I can do it? Well, let me show you that I can do it. Because when it breaks down to it, like your code is going to be executed on my system anyways. If I have to read the assembler, I'm going to read the assembler. If I have to load it in a debugger, I will load it in a debugger, and I will hook all your function calls. So this sort of idea fell flat on its head.
Let me throw in some stuff there.
Interesting story about security researchers going to jail and lawsuits. There's a guy, Charlie Miller, and this was probably 2007 at the time. He was doing Cisco iOS vulnerability research. And basically he had found a remote root exploit in Cisco iOS, which affected pretty much every Cisco switch on the planet. And he had notified Cisco that he had found the bug, went through proper bug disclosure procedures. The Cisco people kind of got into a fight with him, telling him that his bug wasn't as important as he said it was, and he was like, oh no, you're highly mistaken, it is bad. And then he would say, no, it's not that bad, we're not going to focus too much on it now. He's like, okay, well, there's this thing called Black Hat DEF CON coming up, and I'm going to be doing a presentation in front of about 5,000 people, and I'm going to tell them about this bug. So you got time to fix it now, or I'm going to go tell the whole world. So they didn't fix it. And Black Hat came around, and it was the day of him to speak, and there was 5,000 people sitting in the room, humongous conference room, and at the doorway, 5 minutes before his talk, police officers, lawyers showed up and confiscated his presentation materials and would not allow him to present that information on that screen. So he was stopped right there at that spot, and it started a huge, debate within the security community about what is the company's responsibility, what is our responsibility as security researchers. You know, is it okay for us, if a company's not listening to us and we're trying to tell them, hey, you got problems, is it okay for us at that point to go and say, oh, you know what, F you, and I'm going to go drop this stuff on the internet. Let the internet fix it. They deserve to know. If you want to lie to your customers and hide information from your customers, that's your prerogative. I don't have to do that. I don't work for you. So, but at the same time, if you go release this information, what if a bad hacker uses that information that you just released to go do real damage? And now what is your responsibility in that? Because you unresponsibly disclosed information. That's what we call responsible disclosure, right? So you're disclosing information, disclosing topics to people, and disclosing bugs in a responsible way that those companies have time to fix those bugs before the world finds out about it and bad things can be done with it. So these are all processes that have been created within the last 10 years. You have to think about this, like there was no such thing as a penetration tester 15 years ago. That job didn't exist. There was no such thing as a professional hacker. There was no such thing as, a systems hardening engineer. There was no such thing as any of these jobs. These jobs will all exist from here on out. As long as there's computers, there's going to be some guy who's responsible for the computer. This is a job that will exist forever now, and we're the first to be doing this in an industry. It's like being the first airline pilots or being the first, you're the first job of, it's nothing more than a, kind of a blue collar job in the sense that it's just, if you're a systems engineer, you got to fix these systems, you got to do this, and there's a process to it. Just like if you are a plumber, there's a process to how you hook this pipe up and you do this. It's all, it's not huge thinker stuff. Research and development now, that's thinker stuff, right? Systems engineers, network engineers, that kind of stuff is more of just, I know this, I have this problem, I have to do this, and I have to do it like this, right? It's much more structured. So, strengthening security. Jump back? You want me to talk about it? All right. Games that lead to system hardening. What we talked about before, red team versus blue team, capture the flag, crack me's, pwn to own. And then the most important things is team roles and skill completeness, right? So at this point, I like to tell a good red team, blue team story. A great red team, blue team story was simulated in a lab environment, of course, lab environment. I had an offensive red team, which is the hackers. We're the bad guys. There was 4 of us. And then there was a blue team, which consisted of about 10 people. And those 10 people's job was to stop us from breaking into their network. And we had a 72-hour window. And the game was on for 72 hours. There was a phone line open between the 2 of us. We could tell them, they could tell. Nobody's talking to each other because you don't want them to know what you're doing, and they don't want you to know what they're doing to stop you. So the way they had designed their network was really interesting. They had about 3,000 virtual computers, like the simulated 3,000 external web servers and database servers and all these different types of servers. But then in the center, there was one single computer that could access all 1,000 of those computers. You could not, from one of the 3,000 computers, access another computer. The only way you could access it was you had to go back to what they called the jump box or island box. And from that box was the only box that you could access any one of the 3,000 boxes. So it was easy for me to get onto that outer 3,000 box ring, right? Now I had to get into that center jump box because I needed to be able to get to the database servers so I could steal their corporate data. Or I needed to get over here to the user table so I could steal all the usernames and passwords to all the employees that worked at the company. So I needed to get into that jump box. But that jump box, they were monitoring every little hiccup. They were watching this thing so close, you know? Like, it made it really challenging as far as an architectural and a network design. I'd never really come across anything like that in my career at that point. Now, me and my team, we did figure out a way to get into that jump box, but we got into that jump box using O-Day. We used 4 O-Days in this, and usually in red team, blue team exercises, you don't burn O-Day. You don't use O-Day. O-Day is very secret. It's guarded. You know, it's my precious. You know. So we used 4 O-Day, and we got into the jump box, and we knew that the jump box was being heavily monitored, and we knew there was a possibility that they saw us get in there. So our first thought was, as soon as we get into the jump box, we got to hide somewhere else. So let's find out who the blue team members are that are watching it, and then let's try to get into one of their personal boxes, and then we'll sit back there and watch what they're doing while they try to analyze where we're at, and then it'll allow us to hack through the rest of the situation. So we get into the jump box, and then from there I immediately get into one of the blue team guys' boxes. Now here I am in his personal desktop server, and he's got his IRC session open, and he's talking to the other blue team members, and I'm watching them talk about tracking me down and my team down. And so I'm like, they found this, or they figured this out, and I'm like, oh no, they figured this part out, and they were good. Really smart guys. They were doing live memory forensics. They were literally going, any machine I had touched, they would go in there, and they would do memory forensics. They would take a memory capture, because real hackers, we don't put stuff on disk. We only in memory, baby. So they do the memory samples, and they were able to find 3 of the 4 O-Days that we used. And I had an O-Day rootkit, an O-Day Linux rootkit. And for them to be able to find O-Day stuff, I mean, there's governments that can't do that kind of stuff. And these guys that could do this. In the end, I lost the engagement. I lost because that machine that I had jumped to of that blue team guy, after he had found out how deep we had actually got and that we had penetrated the jump box, literally I'm watching the chat session amongst him and his other people. And the very last thing he says, that before I lose my connection to the hacked box, was, I can't believe how bad they did us. I feel so dirty. I'm just paranoid. I'm deleting everything. And that's what he did. Out of pure paranoia. He had no idea I was in his box watching him. He had no idea, but he had known that I'd gotten all these other things. And out of just pure paranoia, he's like, I'm just deleting everything and rebuilding everything. And that's how they kicked me out of the network. And that was when I lost my access. But I did win most of the engagement. So there were certain sets of rules that you had to comply with for the engagement. And I had achieved probably 3 out of the 5 of the rules. So it was a good game. You know, you don't sleep for 72 hours. This is the most fun I've ever had in my life. Like, you're just sitting in a room, coffee, and you're just going to war. It's literally war. It's war. Like, here's my offensive attack. Here's your defense. Then they come after you offense, trying to track down where you're at. I mean, it's a lot of games. It's fun. It's modern day war in a digital space.
And at the end, you hash it out.
Yeah, at the end, you hash it out. You get to go over there and talk to the blue team, and you're like, hey, man, you know, that was pretty cool when you did that, and oh, that move, that was awesome. How did you do that, you know? And you get that nerddom. And that goes to skill completeness, right? Because in the world of information security, nobody can be, even in the world of hackers, okay? There's guys that are what I like to call triggermen. Triggermen are guys who are really good at network moving around. They understand how networks are set up. They're good. They're really great system and networking engineers. They've been around the game for a long time. They understand how companies deploy infrastructure and how they build stuff. So they're very good at using the tools that a research developer, a zero-day writer might do. So there's the hacker guy who spends all day long reverse engineering code and finding the bugs. But that's what he does all day long. He doesn't spend time navigating networks and trying to defeat IDS and IPS. He spends all day reverse engineering code. So is he usually the best guy to be actually executing that code and moving around the network with that bad code? Probably not. You know, there's other guys and other skill sets. Then you have your network, what I call packet monkeys, right? Packet monkeys are the guys that are looking at all the data flowing on the wire. They're the guys that are, you know, looking for those signatures in the data. You know, you have your systems guys who are just looking at systems. They can do memory analysis. They can find, you know, they can reverse engineer malware, that kind of stuff. So on a team of, you know, on an IT team, I wouldn't say a team of hackers, even in a team of hackers, it's good to have somebody who does one in everything. Nobody should have the same skill set, right? Like if I'm a Python programmer and you're a C# programmer, we work together. two Python programmers working together. Yeah, you guys can do some cool stuff, but the more diversity that you add into your IT around you, find something that is your specialty, dive into that specialty, and then work with other engineers that have a specialty of something that they love. And then when you get all together, the things you create at that point are beautiful. You know, that's when the real magic happens, is when you have somebody who's an expert at this, and somebody who's an expert at that, and somebody who's an expert at that, and then you guys all collab together. That's when it's the best. You know, that's when fun stuff happens. As far as Metasploit goes, you know, if you guys want to check out, I'm sure all the geeks in the room already know what Metasploit is. But if you don't know what Metasploit is really cool. It's got a ton of tutorials, documentations on how to use it, create payloads, exploit systems, do all this in lab environment. I mean, I call it the script kiddies tool, but you know, as Mazza was pointing out last night as we were writing these, I still use Metasploit today. Like, even though I am way beyond script kiddie, I still use Metasploit because there are certain environments and certain situations that Metasploit is the best tool for those situations.
And then Mazza will hit the last note because he loves that one.
Read the effing manual. Most security vulnerabilities come from people not knowing how to configure their systems or how their systems are intended to work. So by reading the manual and understanding how it's supposed to be configured, how the architecture is, the design of it, you can make sure it runs as intended.
Okay, this is where you pull out your phones and you just take a picture of that right there. If you're a nerd and you're interested in about systems hardening, these topics up here, you can go home and Google each one of those things, learn more about them. This will pretty much cover everything in systems hardening as far as technology. Intrusion detection systems, what we talked about before. Full disk encryption. That means, you know, if you lose your laptop or your phone, me as a hacker guy can't just pick up your laptop and like get all your fun pictures that are on your computer that aren't supposed to be there. You know, containerization, virtualization. You got kernel hardening with grsec and SE Linux. We mentioned that before. File integrity checking, which is HIDS, which is a host-based intrusion detection system. System logging and monitoring. Again, with that, you know, red team, blue team that I was talking about before, what made it extremely hard for me to move around their network was the fact that they had a centralized monitoring solution. All 3,000 of those computers fed their logs into a single server, which there was then code written on top of that to parse out and look for certain events that were happening and notify system administrators. Like imagine you write code that just analyzes logs, looking for login events. Then you write code that says whenever a login event is found, go to this IRC channel with this bot and post in the IRC channel that, hey, this login event just happened. Now that IRC channel, what if that IRC channel has got every system administrator from the company sitting in there? So they literally just sit and idle in an IRC channel all day long, and a bot comes in and tells them anytime something on their network happens. Hey, somebody just logged into this box over here. Hey, it makes it really easy for them to track down and start responding to stuff. So, go ahead.
Wait, am I allowed? Okay, cool, I can do that. Which goes into essential IT skills. That is pretty much automate your workflow. Work smarter, not harder, which is the hacker mentality. If you can make the computers work for you while you doing like the least amount of work, that is the best. That is the best thing.
I am the laziest dude on the planet. My whole life is about writing code to make things faster for me. Instead of taking 30, 40 minutes to do the same process over and over again, why don't I just write some code to automate that and make it faster? So, I mean, that is hacker mentality 101. Yeah.
And team player, but the most important is kind of knowing how to research, knowing how to find information. There's a lot of jobs where you just get thrown in there and you might not know their whole API, you might not know their architecture, you might not know how to code something. And for the first month or two, you might be Googling everything. You might be looking up like, oh wait, well how do I do this specific operation? Well, how do I find out how this service works well? But by doing that, you familiarize yourself and you learn more about how to actually do this, and you're basically teaching yourself.
Yeah. Learn how to learn. That's it. All right, guys, thank you.